Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. It's Monday of the Democratic National Convention week. And in Chicago, local businesses are boarded up. Activists are handing out abortion medication and protesters are chanting, "Welcome to Hell Week," as they run around dressed as little abortion pills. These are two different groups of protesters. Yes, the Democratic National Convention is officially underway. Tonight, President Joe Biden takes to the stage for his, I don't know, this is like his address before they put him on Mount Rushmore. Amy, Nancy Pelosi says he should go up there, should be the fifth. She's not arguing they should take Teddy Roosevelt down, but they should add Joe Biden. Meanwhile, he and she are not on speaking terms, according to the reporting. Senator Amy Klobuchar assures us that there will be tears of joy. Joy. They'll be crying. There'll be tears of joy shed for Joe Biden and hugs all around less than a month after he was unceremoniously ousted in what even Maureen Dowd of the New York Times called a coup. But activists are not waiting for anyone to take to the stage to show their anger. They're already on the streets. It's actually quite interesting because you've got the groups of people who really, really, really don't like Israel, and in many cases, Jews, out there protesting, and they're like working with the mayor. We'll spew all of our hatred in an organized way with the city microphones and stages. And then you've got this other group that's like, F them. We want to be punched in the face by cops so we can go out and show everybody. People need to get hurt in order for us to make a difference. So it's starting well. There are these groups on the streets in the faces of Chicago cops saying, if you pigs, nice, warning DNC leaders, either go home, or if you don't go home, we're going to bring the war home. Watch.
Pig, oh, did you get your nose broken, pig? You lose a fight, you stupid fucking pig. Your face looks fucked up, pig. Fuck you, pig. You look fucked up, pig. I hate you. God, you are so fucking pathetic. Get a job.
And I hope you have nightmares about the people in Chicago police killed.
You're a fucking loser, pig. You're a
and I know
fucking
you're
loser.
getting all week. Welcome to Hell 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 Week.
Okay, just for the listening audience, that guy getting up in the face of this very calm, restrained cop was obviously a man wearing a keffiyeh covering his head with breasts, speaking in his man voice, calling the cop a loser and telling the cop to get a job. Okay. Sweetheart, you might need a moment. You might need some time by yourself to do some life reflection. Come to grips with where things landed for you. Those moments we just showed you courtesy of Julio Rosas at the Blaze and Tim Pool's team on the scene as well. Axios is reporting Democratic lawmakers were warned not to book hotel rooms in their own names and not to confront the protesters. Apparently the protesters have been calling the hotels looking for various Democratic lawmakers. So that's nice. I'm sure they're feeling great because unlike, the president, the vice president, they don't travel around with teams of security, the lowly congressmen and women. So we took a deeper dive into one of the groups expected at the convention. Not sure if the man with the boobs calling the cop the loser and to get a job is part, we're trying to figure out which faction of protesters he's with. There's one that's really nasty and then there's one that's just medium nasty. In any event, we took a deeper dive into one of the groups expected at the convention, and they questioned in one of their online pamphlets, why do people in the U.S. have the right to prioritize their own safety? This group shared this scene online today from nearby the DNC. It shows young boys being given bloody shoes by an activist and then throwing them at pictures of Vice President Harris, President Biden, Donald Trump, and others. And while the threatening chants are disgusting, so are scenes of marches like this. Young women right down the road dressed up as abortion pills. I'm sorry. This is so absurd. Oh my God. They're wearing little pills that read mifepristone. You can't make it up. They're big white circles for the listening audience. They look like eggs. And their chant is F the courts, F the state. You can't make us procreate. I have a feeling it's not going to be an issue for you ladies. I think you're good. The abstinence program has worked for some over the years. Good luck with that. So is all of this going to turn off swing state voters, most of whom are pretty normal? Or is it all just baked into cake now for Democrats? I mean, there's no one I want to talk more to about the abortion pill costumes than the guys from Real Clear Politics. That when I listen to their show, I think this is something they need to weigh in on. Their website's a must-read destination, and I love their show. They're on SiriusXM, a neighbor to yours truly as well. Tom Bevan is the co-founder and president of RCP. Carl Cannon is Washington bureau chief, and Andrew Walworth is chief content officer. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Some Americans enjoy using their credit cards because it can be a hassle-free way to pay and also a secure one. But our sponsor, the American Payments Coalition, says that some DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. They say the bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, and that allows them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. They say corporate megastores will make more money, and you will wind up paying the price. Find out more info at guardyourcard.com, and consider telling Congress to guard your card while you're there, too. So who I really wanted to talk to was Andrew, because I know Andrew is going to have strong thoughts. Where is your Mifepristone costume, Andrew?
Well, I tell you, we arrived last night, and we're right off Michigan Avenue, and we did see a bunch of protesters, and the police. I will tell you, the police presence outnumbered the protesters about 3-1 in this one demonstration, and the demonstration seemed fairly contained. But I do think what's interesting about these two competing protest narratives is the sort of Planned Parenthood and the there's going to be an inflatable IUD that's 18 feet tall, apparently. That's all actually in support of Kamala Harris. But in contrast, as you pointed out, the anti-Israel or pro-Palestinian protests are really sort of against her. So sort of competing narratives. I mean, there are two sort of issues that seem to have galvanized the protests here. One is pro what Kamala Harris is doing and what she represents, anti-Trump, and the other one is anti-Kamala Harris and obviously anti-Trump as well. I mean, I don't know. It'll make for an interesting week.
Who is that supposed to appeal to? An 18-foot IUD only makes women around the world shudder. No one wants to even think about that. Meanwhile, down the road, this is one's for you, Tom Bevan. Down the road at the DNC, they're giving away free abortions, free abortion pills, and free vasectomies, my friend. So don't think all the fun is for the ladies, because if you men had something you forgot to take care of, you can put an end to it right down the street from where Kamala Harris accepts the nomination on the stage Thursday night.
Yeah, we're actually going to send somebody down there to talk to one of these people that's standing in line to get a vasectomy and just to understand exactly what's going on. They said there's a wait list for this.
Is it going to be Phil? Please let it be Phil.
No, Phil's going to be, I think, over at the United Center, but we're going to try and track down it's fascinating, right? Wouldn't you want to know and hear from one of these people who's standing in line to get a vasectomy at the Democratic National Convention?
Yes.
Sponsored, by the way, in conjunction with the Wiener Circle. I mean, you really can't even make this stuff up.
No. What? Seriously?
Seriously.
Yeah.
It's a hot dog place in Chicago.
Chicago's known for its hot dogs.
You can only get the vasectomy on Monday, apparently. That's the only day they're offering. But you can get the morning after pill and the other stuff all throughout the convention. So if you're planning on coming down for your vasectomy, you've got to come today.
That's all very consistent with the Democrats' abortion plan in general. All the time. All the time is fine. Yeah, there's no limits whatsoever. Please get the abortion on demand. You can do it street side. You can do it in the privacy of your home. The one thing you can't do is pray outside of an abortion clinic, but you can get the actual abortion. It's kind of crazy, honestly. Like when I was younger, and I've said this on the show, I was liberal. I was Democrat. I was a Democrat, and I was raised in a Democrat household. And I look around at this party and these open celebrations of like, whether you're pro-abortion or not pro-abortion, there's no question you're taking a life, the promise of a life, to be most charitable to the pro-choice side. How do you celebrate that in the street? How do you like, yay, I'm going to dress up as the little thing that will kill the baby. So fun. Yay, I kill babies. Here I am. That's insane to me, Carl. I look at this party and I think, isn't the name of the game at this point about getting those moderates in the 7 swing states?
Well, Bill Clinton certainly thought so when he spoke here in 1996 while running for election. And he emphasized to the country, to the delegates, the press, that he thought abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. That was the term of art. By the time Hillary Clinton ran for president against Barack Obama's in the primaries, and if you said that, you'd be booed. So the Democratic Party has changed a little bit. And I think it's tied up in the environmental movement, this extreme idea that the planet is being threatened by global warming. And there's this whole movement not to have children at all. And it's sort of caught up. It's taken on a whole different cast and become more radicalized. And, Tom, you guys mentioned the vasectomy thing. I mean, it's like a bookmobile that gives, remember those bookmobiles, Megyn, when we were kids, they go around to neighborhoods and you check out library books. Sure. Now you can go get a vasectomy at a bookmobile here in Chicago. And I guess my main concern, if I was, what if a car like ran into the bookmobile while you were having the vasectomy? That wouldn't be good.
No. Courtesy of Kamala Harris. Literally a ball buster. I'm concerned because if I'm the Democrat Party, I'm thinking, yes, I want to activate my base, but they seem pretty activated just by her elevation, just by the fact that she's replaced the guy who was losing. So now you've got all of this stuff that we've been discussing. And then less known, but also kind of interesting, Tom, is they're posting all over the internet their like diversity group sessions that are going on all day over there. There's the Native American caucus, the LGBTQ caucus, the Black caucus, the Hispanic caucus, the Climate Crisis Council, so on. So that's sort of white dudes for Kamala and white chicks for Kamala. Like that was not pretend. They remain a segregated party. The blacks don't congregate with the whites, don't congregate with the Hispanics, etc. And they actually, this just was tweeted out before we got to air, they opened, at least on paper, with a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's where you stand up and you like pay homage to the Native Americans and you express your apologies for stealing their land. I'll read you what this one sounds like. The DNC wishes to acknowledge that we gathered together to state our values on lands that have been stewarded through many centuries by the ancestors and descendants of tribal nations who have been here since time immemorial. We honor the communities native to this continent and recognize that our country was built on indigenous homelands. We also recognize and honor the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe, also known as the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi nations. Tom, anyone sitting in Wisconsin is going to be like, what?
Yeah, look, I live up the road in Evanston, which is a very liberal community, just about, it's the first suburb north of Chicago. And they've been doing this for years. And the land acknowledgement at the beginning of the city council meeting is like 30 minutes long. I mean, it takes forever. They just keep going on and on and on. Look, I think this shows the Democratic Party is still very much invested in identity politics. And for a party that's trying to, bring people together and unite folks, which is the goal of winning an election, by the way. They're doing it by segregating and slicing people into these very, very small dudes. You mentioned, white dudes for Harris, and they've got all of these sort of individualized, siloed identity groups, and they're not sort of coming across as very inclusive of everybody. And I think that's a problem. I think to the extent that they continue to speak in those terms in that way, it's going to not resonate fully and as broadly as it should at this point in the campaign.
Well, so you know what this is reminding me of? A couple years ago, and the venue shall remain nameless because they're very nice and I like the people who organized it, but it was a remarkable moment and it kind of encapsulates what we're looking at. So I went to this one of those. It's not a leftist think tank. It's more like a center think tank that tries to get people from the right and the left to come and speak to their group every year. They asked me to come and speak, and I did. And I listened to the other speakers. And one of the other speakers was a group of mostly Black men who had been interviewed by the people putting on the conference in the wake of George Floyd. And they had very strong reactions, and it was an interesting bird's eye view into their experience in sort of the 6 months after Floyd. And one guy was very sort of anti the white savior movement that was emerging. Like, leave us alone. I don't need you. I don't live in a white community. I don't need your white hope, your white help. You know, where were you when we didn't have air conditioning in our schools and our kids are getting beaten the hell up? And, you know, because of this, you want to come in and make yourself feel better by saving me? No, thanks. And he was a provocative, interesting guy. The next day we go, and you know who the speaker was? Ashley Judd. And Ashley Judd got up there, and he was sitting right in front of me at the event. We were both in the audience now. This guy's right in front. And she starts with a land acknowledgement. It was over the top versus the one I just read you. And then she launches into the patriarchy and how awful they are. And because of the patriarchy, she can't say what she wants on the internet. And the patriarchy stop this and stop that and blah, blah, blah. And white people are bad. And this guy turns around to me, and forgive me, says, and I quote, "What the fuck was that?" I could think as I watch this is my friend is watching this right now. He's going to think that as he sees mifepristone pills and a giant IUD, vasectomies on demand, land acknowledgements, and all of the various groups meeting to declare their fealty to Kamala. Tom, I'll stick with you on that one. I don't know if this is the right messaging in a race that, according to you guys, it still has no clear leader, no front runner is the headline on RCP today.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into the polls in a minute because there were some polls released over the weekend that show that this race is really, really close. But you're right. And it also sort of, you know, some of the sillier parts of it undercut the argument that JD Vance is the one who's weird if you're marching around in as an abortion pill down the streets of Chicago or whatever. So, yeah, again, I'm not sure. You're right, Megyn. It's about activating your base, right? You have to do that. But as you said, people here are activated, and it's got to be about getting to the middle, speaking to, independent voters and moderates, not about, having sort of the fringes and extremes of the party sort of running the show here. That's not what they want. And we'll see whether, it ends up that way or not.
Okay. So Carl, meanwhile, yeah, go ahead.
So go ahead. I was just going to say, I mean, the thing though is the base wasn't activated under Biden. So the fact that she has activated the base is not an entirely crazy strategy for them to take. It's just at this point, can she move towards the center or bring in those independent voters? And when you see things like Friday when she announced her economic plan, it seems like that was not designed to reach out to the middle. And I think the question right now is, can she continue this sort of vibe-based campaign, which they keep calling it? And because every time she comes out with a policy, if it is designed to appeal to the base, in its essence is not designed to appeal to those middle of the road voters that she's trying to reach out to. So I think that's the challenge she's going to have over the next couple of weeks. And we'll see at this convention where she comes down. Is she going to keep speaking to the base, or does she have an idea or two that will reach out to the middle of the road? And, maybe it's pro-fracking. Maybe she comes out and, defends the oil industry. I don't know.
Do you think we're going to get policy, Andrew? We're not going to get policy. We're going to get joy. And we can't go back. And I really think that, democracy is strong, but also weak. We're going to that's what we're going to get, right? We're not going to get new policy proposals, especially since she tried for the first time on Friday and really got her hand bitten, right? I mean, the Washington Post and all these lefties came for her saying this sounds like communist propaganda.
Right. But do you really think she can continue just running on vibes alone? I'm not sure about that. At some point, someone's going to demand that she take a position on something.
She'll do
Well,
it,
they
but she'll
kinda-
do
they
it
kinda
post September 18th, Carl, or whenever the early voting gets underway in Pennsylvania.
Well, they kind of ran sort of the vibe thing to its end. They've run into a cul-de-sac. Over the weekend, they had, what was it? Strength through joy, which it took the internet about 10 minutes to remember that was actually a Nazi party slogan. I mean, and remember when Donald Trump used some word that was once in a Hitler speech, and they said he's quoting Hitler. Now the Democrats were literally quoting Hitler. So I think if I'm in the Democratic Party, I say, okay, we've done this vibe thing, we've done the joy. Let's start talking to voters where they are. So, Megyn, you think it'll happen in September? It should happen soon, though, if they want to win, I would think.
I want to go back over the Friday announcement because it's interesting. But before we get to that, let's just stick with what's going to happen tonight, because it occurs to me you're going to have Joe Biden get up there on a Monday, give his farewell speech. I mean, this is what was promised.
The first of his 9 farewell speeches. Yeah.
But this is the moment that clearly was promised, right? Like you step down,
That's
we
right.
will make a god out of you at this Democrat. I mean, I can only imagine the setup video we're going to get, because they know the speech is not going to really do it. But if you
Megyn,
read the
have you
news
actually
over the
been
weekend,
to Mount Rushmore? Have they already
Yes.
started construction, though? I bet they have.
yes, it's going to take
Right.
as long as it's taking them to build the Crazy Horse one. It's just like 200 years. Maybe they'll have his forehead done. But what's interesting to me is it's going to be basically a fraud. I mean, what's going to happen tonight is Joe Biden's going to get up there and say, me, 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 and also Kamala, yay, yay, Democrats and Trump is bad. But if you read the news, what we're getting is this Democrat Party is fractured. It is definitely fractured, in large part because of the Israel thing and the protesters, but also because of what was done to Joe Biden. And while, I mean, I've listened to you guys enough to know we all thought there's no way this guy can continue, in the presidency, never mind. There's no way he can continue for a second term of the presidency. There's still a lot of lingering resentments over the fact that he was pushed out. There was a news item just this morning about Mike Barnicle, who appears on Morning Joe every day, running into one of the Obama guys at Wrigley Field in Chicago. And the Obama guy said something to the effect of, thank God we got him out. And Barnicle, who's more of a Biden guy, said, who? And the Obama guy said, Joe Biden. And apparently Mike Barnicle told him to F off and went off on him. And this got back to Joe Biden, who apparently laughed with delight and loved the fact that he called him out. So there's that. There's the reporting as Nancy Pelosi goes on her book tour about like all the weird revelations she's making about how she read his letter saying he's staying in, but that really didn't sound like him. And she really didn't do anything, and yet they're not on speaking terms. And whether their friendship continues, it's really kind of his call, but she dreams so, she hopes so. So there's that. And then you've got this mention in the New York Times by Mike Donilon, Biden's top guy, over the weekend saying, I'm paraphrasing, we really tried for ways to make her look good, but we just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Was it Ron Klain? Donilon's also in there. They're both in there. But those are Biden's top guys. So I don't know. I mean, Andrew, I guess I'll go with you on that one. This is a party that's not quite as unified and joyful as it's going to lead us to believe tonight.
Yeah, I would be surprised tonight, though, if you got much of that vibe. I think that they will have it organized to the point where Joe Biden will give a speech from the teleprompter. He's not going to go off script. And it will be reported, especially in the mainstream press, as a big success. I mean, one of the stories I'm watching in regards to this is the Hunter Biden story, because I think that you may see over the next, month or so, more and more sort of revelations about Hunter Biden's real relationship, because
his corruption, you mean?
Now that they've,
is that what you mean?
Yeah. Now that they've thrown Biden out, off the bus, there's less and less reason to sort of cover that up. And I think that might be something that the Bidens are hyper aware of right now, because they do, I think, want to make sure that he gets a pardon before Biden leaves office. I mean, he's still the president. That's the thing that people are having trouble with. I mean, Joe Biden still, until January, is the president of the United States. So he still has a role to play in all this, and people have to be aware of that. So I think, it'll be interesting tonight, though. But I do think that it'll be a pretty disciplined first night, at least.
Well, I think they'll be disciplined throughout. I mean, the Democrats are pretty disciplined. I mean, I think, and unlike the Republican Party, which revolves right now around one man, the Democrats have all-stars for their people. I mean, their voters love Michelle Obama, and she's coming out tomorrow night. They still love Barack Obama, and he's coming out Wednesday night. And they still love Bill Clinton, and he's coming out tomorrow night. I mean, it's actually kind of, if I were Michelle Obama, I would say I'm not going on the same night as Bill Clinton. I'm not, no. Put me on another night. Put me on Monday. I'll be Monday Michelle. But I do think, Carl, because people are wondering whether there's still opportunity for a bump for her or whether she already got her bump. It's built into what happened over the past month. I think she could still get a little bump with that cast of all-stars within the Dem party ginning up enthusiasm on their side.
I agree with you completely, and I think the reason for that is what you said earlier, Megyn. There's still lingering doubt, even among the rank and file. For people, there's still affection for Joe Biden in places, and I think if they can paper over that, although and everybody sticks to their knitting and everybody does what they think, I think she will. There's no reason to think she wouldn't get a slight bump coming out of here, but she mainly got the convention bump before the convention. But as I heard you talk about it, Megyn, wouldn't it be a hell of a much more interesting and fun story and a great convention if Biden got up there and threw away his speech and said, you know what, they want me to resign. I think maybe you're my delegates. I think I still want to run. Now that would be a great story.
This is malarkey.
Right. Wouldn't that be awesome? It happened here in Chicago in the convention that nominated James A. Garfield. Garfield got up and said he was supposed to be speaking for Senator Sherman. He says, so who do we want? You expect him to say Sherman. Some wise guy yells, we want Garfield. And it stampeded the convention. Maybe Biden should do that. He should say, who do you want? And plant some shill out there, Hunter. We want Biden. Anyway, be a better story.
Yes, it would. Unfortunately, this whole process, too, is pretend because she's already secured the nomination. They did it via digital vote a couple of weeks ago. So this is all kind of just pretend. It's like when the couple runs off and gets eloped. They elope. Sorry. They elope, but they don't tell the parents. Then they have a big wedding ceremony where only the parents don't know that they're already married. That actually happened with my two friends back at Fox News. So I want to get back to convention week, but can we spend a minute on those polls, Tom? Because this is the headline, no front runner in swing states before Democratic convention. And everyone, I say this all the time, not just because you guys are on, I've been saying it for over 15 years. Go to realclearpolitics.com every morning to start your day. Just click on all the editorials. Just read, they post them from the left and from the right. So no one gets to corrupt your brain. You get to take in what both sides are saying, make up your own mind. It's really kind of the only way to consume news in today's day and age. So you've posted this by Jonathan Drager, and he's citing that New York Times Siena poll that we talked about late last week, but also there's a Rasmussen poll that's dropped. And you're going through all of the swing states here from Arizona and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia, all of them. And the Nevada, the conclusion is no clear favorite has emerged. Trump is up 0.2 points in the Real Clear Politics average of the top 7 battleground states. He led by 4.3 before Biden dropped out, so it's a fall for him. However, he is still slightly in the lead. And if you look back at where Trump was at this point in 2016, he was down, I think, 6 points, and he won that election. He was also down in 2020 at this point, and he lost that election. So from all that, we glean what, Tom Bevan?
Well, this race is looking a lot like 2016 to me. I mean, you're right. So when Joe Biden exited the race in the national polls, he was down 3.1% on a Real Clear Politics average. Biden was down. Now Kamala Harris is up 1.4%. So it's been about a 4.5 point swing in her favor. Same thing with the battleground states. Trump was leading by 4.3. Now he's leading by 0.1. So he's had about the same, maybe a little bit less of a fall. Remember, 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by about 2.5 points, but lost the Electoral College. And, in very close fashion in Pennsylvania and whatnot. Of these 7 battleground states, the largest lead is Kamala Harris has a 2-point lead in Michigan. Every other battleground state now is at 1 point or less. A couple of them are at, 0.1 or 0.2. So it's incredibly, incredibly close. And I expect it to stay that way. I agree with you and Carl that she'll probably get a little bit of a bump out of this convention. But then the race will revert to sort of the stasis, which I think is, again, her leading in the national polls, but these battleground states being incredibly close. And that also leads me to believe that I think this debate, should it happen on the 18th of September on ABC News, is going to be crucially important for these campaigns. Absolutely.
Wait, I thought it was September 10th. It's like
sorry.
They've been all over the board.
I probably got the date wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. It is September. And they announced it's in Philadelphia. It's going to be incredibly important. It could be that, typically debates don't matter, but in a race this close with this much on the line, I think it might.
It's so like all over the board. And I'll tell you, my husband, Doug, with respect to Real Clear Politics, he likes to go to the betting odds every day. And he's not a huge Kamala Harris fan. And he was getting really worried because she was up by a lot in those betting odds. And now Trump is back up. He was watching it get tighter and tighter. And now Trump has retaken the lead in the wake of her economic proposals on Friday. And it does make me wonder whether people are paying attention. Normally my instincts as like just a commentator, not an economist, not a political operative, are when a politician gets up and offers a bunch of free stuff, her numbers should go up. Americans like free stuff, especially Democrats. That's why a lot of them are Democrats. They think that the rich get all the breaks and that the Democrat Party is going to look out for them. The middle class people who get screwed. So you tell me I'm getting free stuff, like just because I had some kids or because I have never owned a home or because I'm paying a lot of the growth, I say, yes, I'm voting for you. That's going to help my wallet. That doesn't seem to be what is happening, at least not to put too much weight on the betting polls, Tom, but the betting polls are swinging back the other way. When people have to put money on this, they think he's going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and those are very reactive to events, right? They tend to swing sort of in one direction or another. So, something could happen tomorrow and Kamala Harris could be back ahead. It depends on the betting market that you're looking at as well. But listen, I agree with you. I mean, the economy and inflation is still the number one issue in this election by far. Immigration's maybe, in second or third, depending on which poll you look at. Trump still has advantages. Even the Washington Post poll and the CBS News poll that came out over the weekend that had Kamala Harris up 4 and 3 points respectively, Trump had an advantage on those issues. The problem for him, as it's always been, is the personality stuff, right? He's not seen as being as likable, or as honest and trustworthy, or on those sort of intangible metrics. And it's because he goes off script and talks about her looks or her identity or whatever. He's got an advantage on the issues in this race. And so if he can stick to that, I think he'll end up doing better. But right now it is very, very close. So
we've talked about the economic remarks a little, but here's just a little more for the audience. I'm sure you've heard what she announced last week. We were off on Friday, so did not cover it, but she's proposing, as I said, $25,000 for first-time home buyers to help them with a down payment on a house. She's proposing some sort of federal price controls, though apparently this is what she was expected to propose, and the actual remarks as orated didn't necessarily sound quite that extreme to those who expected actual price controls being proposed. We'll see. We have no idea because she doesn't write anything down. There's nothing on her website and so on. And she's proposing a child tax credit of $6,000 for a child in the first year. J.D. Vance had proposed $5,000. So there's a suggestion by some this is yet another attempt to copy a Trump-Vance proposal that might have more populist appeal. But here she is outlining a bit of that on, late last week, SOT 3.
Costs are still too high. And on a deeper level, for too many people, no matter how much they work, it feels so hard to just be able to get ahead. Together, we will build what I call an opportunity economy. A loaf of bread costs 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%. Many of the big food companies are seeing their highest profits in 2 decades. So believe me, as president, I will go after the bad actors. And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
I didn't see anything, almost anything, saying this is a good idea. I'll just give you a flavor, but this is a columnist for the Washington Post, Catherine Rampel, who got a lot of blowback. I went to her X feed. My gosh, her side is like, how could you? She's been trying to soften it ever since, but this is how she reacted to it after Harris said it on Friday. Top 5.
We've seen this kind of thing tried in lots of other countries before: Venezuela, Argentina, the Soviet Union, et cetera. It leads to shortages. It leads to black markets. Plenty of uncertainty. The devil's in the details, I guess, for that bill, but it's really hard for me to imagine any form of legislation that preserves the spirit of what she's proposing that would not be, at best do nothing, at worst cause a lot of harm.
Forgive me, that was her before the speech. And one more, guys. David Friedberg, who's more left-leaning, went on the All In podcast. He analyzes markets, including food, agriculture, and reacted as follows.
There is nowhere in the ag or food supply chain that we are seeing fundamentally price gouging or profit taking happening. What has happened is the cost of labor, the cost of moving stuff around, the cost of fuel, the cost of electricity, the cost of goods has all risen with inflation because of the increase in the money supply and federal spending and the stimulus associated with the Federal Reserve buying assets onto their balance sheet. This is a mistake. It is a problem. It is anti-American. It is anti-free market. It is anti-innovation. It is anti-productivity. And ultimately, it's anti-liberty. And I cannot stand it.
So how do you think that played politically? Because I personally was surprised she got so much blowback.
I'll tell you what I thought. I thought that the details were less important than the direction, that everything she was saying was directionally pointed towards the left. Everything was directionally pointed towards causing more inflation. And I think the American people understand that. If you give first-time home buyers $25,000 to buy the house, that immediately will raise the price of that house by $25,000. That's the way subsidies work. And I think the American people are pretty sophisticated about this at this point. They hear wage and price controls. They know what that means. We've tried them here. I mean, that was Nixon's policy as well. So it's not totally foreign. I mean, we've seen it fail here at home as well as in the countries that people talk about, the Soviet Union, Venezuela, places like that. So I think I wasn't surprised that there was this much blowback. I was surprised that she went that far left out of the box. And I thought that, Catherine Rampel, who you quoted there, is a not a right-wing writer at all. And so she did get a lot of blowback from the people that were sort of center-left. And that might have surprised them. And we'll see, I think, now whether she tries to walk it back a little further because it's unpopular, or whether she doubles down on it because
she was not alone. She's out there, but she's not by herself. And here's the other thing: the $25,000 for first-time home buyers. My understanding is she went further than a proposal Biden had, which would have excluded people who had owned a home but are now renting, like my mom. My mom is technically a renter now, but she's owned a home her whole life. But under, I think, Kamala Harris's plan, she'd be treated as a first-time home buyer and she'd get $25,000. Which right now my mom's probably listening to saying, I'll do it. I'll vote Democrat. My mom is a Democrat. She's a more blue dog Democrat, I'd say. In any event, here's Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame, and real estate is his business. He's been on the show many times, reacting to that piece of it.
There are bad ideas, bad ideas, and really bad ideas, and that falls into this category. When you give $25,000 to anybody in a constrained market, you cause inflation. So if there's 3 houses for sale on the street and everybody bidding on it gets another $25,000, all of that attributes to the seller, and you cause the price of the house to go up because there's no supply. Everybody knows in real estate, that's what I do for a living, that it's not controlled by a federal mandate. Housing is state by state. She can do nothing to solve that problem.
You know, Carl, that makes sense, right? Like everybody gets 25 grand and what happens? The price of homes goes up, just like the college tuition, right? It's like if the government starts increasing the amount we can borrow from the government, guess what happens? Tuition goes up.
Well, you've noticed that she did not, when she talks about price gouging, this general thing like it's the food growers, the grocery industry, by the way, their profit margin is between 1 and 1.2% year after year. She didn't go after colleges at these elite universities. Their inflation's gone up, 200 or 300% in the last generation. You notice she didn't mention them. But I think there's something other than the economic illiteracy about this that didn't help her, that didn't help the Democrats, and it's this. They've been trying out these different themes in this, vibe, meme-based candidacy, and one of them is we're the Freedom Party. Well, the Freedom Party then doesn't do, like Soviet style, well, maybe that's too harsh, but it doesn't do command and control economy thing. It was at odds with what they've been saying. And I think discerning voters, and that's the kind of people they ought to be thinking about right now, is discerning voters in swing states, think, okay, if maybe it's just all, maybe it's just all spin. Maybe it's just all pandering. Maybe none of it's sincere. I think it also undercut their message in a kind of basic way, I thought.
There's one other,
yeah, go ahead.
There's one other aspect of this housing thing, which I think people should also take into account. And economists call it moral hazard, but it's the idea that when you mess with incentives, you're trying to encourage behavior, which we all like. I personally think it's great for people to buy houses. It'd be great if there was more home ownership. But if you sell houses to people who aren't qualified by sort of market levels to buy those houses and pay those mortgages, they end up foreclosing on the house. And this has happened before in American history. We tried it, the SNL crisis, if people remember it. You cannot artificially create a market you can't artificially mess with the market without expecting some sort of blowback. And it's not a good, the market discipline is an important thing. If you can't afford a house, you shouldn't be buying a house. You should wait until you can afford a house. Right, yeah. Exactly. So I think that's another aspect of this that people are aware of, that this isn't the Wizard of Oz. You can't just wave your magic wand and create a different type of housing market. It doesn't work that way. The economy will always sort of adjust, and bad decisions get punished, and we're encouraging bad decisions.
It feels so dishonest, right? It's like we all know how we got to this inflationary cycle, and the biggest driver was the spending that the Biden administration did and the behavior of the Fed at the beginning of his term. And instead of just acknowledging that and saying, we're going to steady it, it's starting to steady, she just says, look at the bad, evil corporations. They're terrible. They're the ones who did it. Even though, as you point out correctly, Carl, the margin of profit for these grocers is like 1%. These are not price gougers, unlike the colleges. They are not price gougers. She won't deal with the consequences of her own party's decision making, her administration's decision making. And this is another real quandary for her, because she's trying to pretend like she's from the outside running to get on the inside, whereas she's second in command in the administration that's given us those problems, which is why Trump put out this ad about 2 seconds after she stopped speaking. SOT 4.
A loaf of bread costs 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Tom, pretty good, Tom.
It's good work by the campaign, for sure, by the Trump campaign. But listen, I mean, you make the fundamental point, Megyn, which is she's the quasi-incumbent, right? She's been part of the administration, the incumbent administration, for 3.5 years. And so for her to come out and say, on day one, I'm going to focus on, have a laser focus on reducing prices, just absolutely begs the question, what have you been doing for 3.5, 4 years, right? And for her to try and say, well, we're never going back. Well, to where we've been. I mean, there are a lot of contradictions in her campaign and in her messaging, and she really does have to try and thread this needle and portray herself as, an outsider, even though she's been the insider. And the other thing too is that, unlike in the past, look, Donald Trump is a known quantity, and we don't have to speculate about what he will do or what an economy under him might look like. We've seen it. And, the polling shows that most people look back on that time pretty favorably. And so I think that's the other issue that's complicating things for Kamala Harris.
The national debt, I think, is 35 trillion right now. 35 trillion with a T. So some people, because we used to do this in America, started to say, how are we going to pay for all that? Where are we going to get the money for all of that? There used to be a question we asked. Then we were told that this monetary policy allowed us to just spend as much as we wanted. And we didn't have to worry about the consequences. Yay! Well, it turned out not to be true. People always wondered whether it would be true or not. It was not. And so an intrepid reporter tracked her down over the weekend and asked that bold question, how are we going to pay for it? And it's amazing how she answers. I'll let her words speak for themselves here in SOT 11.
I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. It's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it in the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. And when we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities, and investing in a broad-based economy, everybody benefits, and it pays for itself.
Okay. This is every time she talks about a plan or when we're going to get a plan or when she's going to speak to the media. This is the clip I think of, you guys. You guys saw the movie Meet the Parents? Robert De Niro, Ben Stiller. Robert De Niro's this undercover CIA agent pretending that he's a florist, and Ben Stiller doesn't know that. And he shows up and gives him this potted plant of just dirt. And he says, well, here, watch. We pulled it.
Look at this. It's a flower pot with the dirt in it.
Actually, the real gift is what's planted in the soil. The bulb of a Jerusalem tulip, which I was told is one of the rarest and most beautiful flowers in existence.
Oh, right. The Jerusalem. From the Jerusalus tulipesius genus. Yes.
Anyway, the guy said with regular watering, it should bloom in about 6 months. So,
well, we'll look forward to that, Greg.
That's a great clip.
That's it.
Well, if you are talking about sort of bad economic ideas, there is one more, which is the no tax on tips, which is bipartisan, which has been sort of derided by most economists as well as being something that is just going to, again, people behave differently when you change the tax incentives, and you'll have people, podcasters, being paid by tips. At least that's what I'll be looking for.
Wall Street will be the first to figure that out. Well, the richest guys are the first to figure out how, some of us are just regular paycheck employees, but those Wall Street guys, the real estate guys, they know how to game all these systems. They'll always find a way. But all of her plans are eventually you'll see them. Eventually I'll speak with someone in the media. Eventually we'll see a return on investment that we make on the child tax credit, when the kid grows up. I will look forward to that, Greg. You guys, it's been a pleasure. Look forward to hearing your reports all this week from Chicago.
Thanks, Megyn.
All right,
Thank you, Megyn.
interest rates have started dropping. So right now is the perfect time to consider American Financing. They are a family-owned company that is helping people create meaningful savings every month. Their salary-based mortgage consultants look at your full financial picture, all of your debts, and they work with you to create a loan program where they could wipe it all out, and in some cases have some cash left over to create emergency savings. American Financing can be a true partner in helping you and your family save money. They never charge any upfront or hidden fees, and it costs you absolutely nothing to find out how much you can save. Their average customer is saving over $800 a month. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call 888-528-1219. 888-528-1219 to learn more. AmericanFinancing.net/Kelly. All I can think about is, every year at Christmas, we go skiing out in Montana. And every year I do like a costume party just for the family. We call it costume night. We go over the top. I think I showed you this year. We did the 10 Commandments. Doug was the best Moses. And I think we're going to go as various forms of abortion this year. That's nothing says family celebration like mifepristone. I don't know, the terrible, disgusting scissors that they use. This is sick. This is how they're choosing to celebrate their party. This is how I kill the baby. Well, this is how I do it. Yay! So fun. Let's go to Wrigley Field. Okay. Yeah, we have come a long way since safe, legal, and rare. It is day one of the Democratic National Convention, underway in Chicago now. But as important as what happens inside the arena is, it's fascinating to watch what's happening outside. Chicago, of course, has a history of protests and violence, in particular when it comes to conventions. And my next guest is an expert on the city. He's a legend in Chicago. His name, and you know him well here on the MK Show, is John Kass, Kass. He's spent over 35 years as a prominent columnist at the Chicago Tribune before departing in 2021. He is now independent and the founder of JohnKassNews.com, always worth reading, so thoughtful, and host of the Chicago Way podcast. John, welcome back to the show. Great to have you.
Megyn, great to be with you. And I don't want to see any pictures of the costumes, though. I want to stay away from that.
These are crazy people.
I'll ask the Virgin Mary up on my right hand, what she thinks of it. I don't think she would think too much of it. But this is the new Democratic Party. This is not Bill Clinton's Democratic Party. This is the Progressive Democratic Party, and they're up in arms to try. What do they want to do? Chase Jews, hate on Jews. I mean, I don't get it, but that's what they're doing. So it must help them. Yeah.
I think that is their plan. They've said that they want to engage with the cops enough that they will get bruised up, and that can be their back to school clothing, their bruises that they entice or entrap the Chicago PD into giving them. This is a cause to be celebrated, saying, why shouldn't there be violence?
When I was a kid, I cheered in Chicago in '68, getting my my crew cuts, like with my, brush cuts from Stanley the Barber on the southwest side in Gage Park. We cheered the police officers at the time. We cheered the cops, giving, as my friend Pat Hickey says, the wood shampoo to the protesters. And I don't want to see anybody getting a wood shampoo today, but, I don't know what they expect Chicago to do. Maybe dominate the entire,
they want the wood shampoo.
They already won.
That's the whole point. This name of this group is called Behind Enemy Lines. And they are saying openly, who says protesting should be safe? All right, hold on a second. I'll read it.
Right.
We've insisted from the beginning of this campaign that sight and sound is not enough, that this convention must be shut down and refuse to engage with careerists and opportunists. We've got to shut down the streets to actually shut down Genocide Joe and killer Kamala. Why do people in the U.S. have the right to prioritize their own safety? How is any protest going to be successful if it doesn't challenge and disrupt business as usual to actually disturb the normal functioning of a society that is aiding and abetting a genocide? And why should any of that be safe? They say if people prioritize their own safety over the people of the world, then the protest will be a victory for killer Kamala. It's that simple. Our responsibility to the people of the world is to actually confront this convention and, yes, take risks to do so. Escalate for Gaza, shut down the DNC. And you know what your mayor did? Not for this particular group, but for the other protesters, like an offshoot of them that's a little bit more normal.
Right.
He set them all up. He's like, here's your microphone, here's your stage, have at it.
He has no, he's a weakling. This mayor is weak. You know, we've gone progressively weaker, mayor after mayor, until now. We've got a guy who basically lives on pharmaceuticals and has panic attacks and can't handle the job. Yeah, he has panic attacks and can't handle the job. And so, I mean, there was a famous story where a few weeks ago he was chased by Marianne Ahern of NBC5, and he ran through an alley and ran around her and got into a car and ran away. He's the mayor of Chicago. You're afraid of Marianne Ahern? I don't think so. But anyway, that's his deal. Look,
but now, what do you make of this the security threat there? Because not only do you have these lunatics, and I don't know who's calling the hotels trying to find out where the Democrats are staying, lawmakers, but that they're now being told use aliases to check in. Then you have them out on the streets saying we've got to get violent if we really want, to get noticed. And you've got these Chicago businessmen, smart men, boarding up their stores, expecting the numbers are as much as, according to the locals, a possible 100,000 influx of protesters trying to break shit up in Chicago.
The left has already destroyed the city. They did so with the Black Lives Matter riots that they called mostly peaceful. The media called it mostly peaceful. And it's never recovered since then. And now what do we have? An outgoing Cook County State's attorney, Kimberly Fox, one of the Soros sisters to Kamala Harris, who doesn't put people in jail. She won't put repeat offenders, violent offenders, in jail. And that's what she's run on, because she's run on the idea that law enforcement is racist, and she doesn't want to be a racist. So she caters to the law breakers. Unfortunately, Megyn, the people who have their bodies broken and their hearts broken are Black people and Latinos, mostly women. And while the big fat cat donors from this event are living in Pritzker appointed royal housing in Lake Geneva and just driving in 90 minutes for the convention, the rest of the people are stuck with it. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry for them.
The governor, though, he sounds all John Wayne-y. I mean, you heard him on CNN like, hey, they're going to get arrested. Here he is. Listen here.
So it's a whole different situation. And honestly, I expect that we're going to have peaceful protests. We're going to protect the protesters, but also protect all the people visiting, 50,000 people coming to Chicago, and the residents of Chicago. So the plan's been in place for a year and a quarter now already. We're going to execute on that plan the next 4 days.
Certainly most of the protesters, I'm sure, intend to be peaceful, but there are some groups that are making it clear they do not want to be peaceful. There's one called Behind Enemy Lines, for example, calling on its supporters to shut down the DNC, urging them to make bruises from Chicago police batons the 2024 back-to-school fall fashion. You guys prepared for that?
If there are troublemakers, they're going to get arrested, and they're going to get convicted.
Yeah, beautiful. JB is the guy who promoted and endorsed Kim Fox. He endorsed her, the Soros sister, the do-nothing prosecutor, prosecutor zero. And now what? Now he wants law and order? Come on. Mm-hmm. That's not what happens. When you stop enforcing the law, an amazing thing happens. And despite his fantasy that when to become presidential timber, after Kamala Harris is done, I guess he'll be happy and he'll run for office. But the damage has been done to the city of Chicago. And look, they're boarding, as you mentioned, they're boarding up the building, the storefronts downtown. You were at the convention in 1996, the Clinton inauguration, weren't you? Or the Clinton coronation?
I was still a practicing lawyer then. Actually, wait, what did I say? I was living in Chicago then, but I didn't go to the convention.
That's what your staff. I've discussed with your staff whether or not you've actually eaten a hot dog, or did you eat the bun, a Chicago hot dog, or just spit out the bun?
Always ate the bun.
Spit out the bun.
Yeah, if I'm gonna have a hot dog or a hamburger, I'm having the bun. I mean, it's like that's half the joy.
Right, exactly. So anyway, that's where we are with Pritzker and his fantasies, and Kamala Harris and her fantasies, and the people of Chicago. You know, the people that are hurt the most by all this Marxist nonsense are the children who don't get educated. Only 17%, mostly Black and Latino kids, can do math at a grade level. And I think only 30%, or just about 30%, can read, barely. I mean, what kind of city is this? And then we're doing this with the Democratic convention here. So we're telling the world, telling the rest of the country, you elect Kamala, you're going to get the Chicago way in your town everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So she comes to Chicago, right? A town that used to be absolutely glorious and now is just a shadow of its former self because of Democrat policies that have taken over and been in control for some time. And we're supposed to celebrate her coronation in a city where, not far from where she will take the stage as our next queen, we had, at least this past weekend, 23 shot, 5 fatally. The weekend before, at least 33 people shot, 1 fatally, mostly Black and brown people. But they don't give a damn. They could not care less, because joy, it's truly joyful if you're rich and you're a connected Democrat.
The politics of this is that the left, the Soros prosecutors, the Democratic Party, all of them, they ran against law enforcement because they wanted to promote their own people. But what that meant was they announced that they would not enforce the law and put repeat offenders in jail, in prison, behind bars, where they belong. And so what you get after year after year after year of this kind of thing is chaos and destruction and anarchy. And that's what we have now. This is not to say, I'm not to say that Trump is the greatest thing in the world, because, you know, he's a human being and no human being is great except for you, Megyn. But the thing is, the anarchy that they're presenting to the world and the desire from the media to ignore what they're seeing and to put a rosy face on it and call it joy and let Tim Waltz have his white man tacos, whatever those are, with mayonnaise and white bread, I guess. It's offensive.
Yes. Let me show that to the audience, John, because they may have missed the Waltz-Harris interview where they sat down with one another in this long PR piece that they released, where he took what opportunity he had to denigrate whites, and she laughed right along, because it's fine to rip on white people. You won't be called a Karen. You can denigrate whites till the cows come home. Whites can be shat upon, no problem. By blacks, by whites, it's not an issue. Here they are laughing over their white guy tacos, suggesting whites only eat tacos with meat and cheese, because I guess he's now our official white person spokesman.
Like I have white guy tacos and
What is
like
that?
black,
Like mayonnaise and tuna? What are you doing?
pretty much ground beef and cheese.
That's
and,
okay. Do you put any flavor in it?
No.
Oh.
Here's the deal. No, they said to be careful and let her know this, that black pepper is the top of the spice level in Minnesota, you know.
I'm the first vice president, I believe, who has ever grown chili peppers.
I'm trying to
You know,
expand
we'll figure
my food knowledge.
You know what? We've got some cantaloupes. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
funny.
Oh, that's hilarious. You know what? I wish that these two morons, before they make any more pronouncements, before they do any more Stalinist price controls and so forth, Walt should get on the L. Get on the L because
The elevated train.
and the elevated train, right up and down at night, and see how the people like it. Because women are victims on the L constantly. I'm a big fan of two websites, like Victor Davis Hanson, of course, who's a big fan of yours, and
Love him.
CWB Chicago, which actually does, crime reporting. And it's amazing what happens. Women constantly in the headlines, constant pounded, smashed, beaten. And the repeat offenders of guys been arrested 7 times or 10 times or 15 times and released from jail while he's awaiting another case, attacks a woman again and again and again. It's happening all the time. I ask you, Megyn, why these reporters, when they write that crime is down or whatever nonsense, when they say that, do they have editors? Do the editors know? I mean, does somebody know, or do they just not care?
Well,
They just shovel it down the throats of the fools, right? Yeah.
John Kass tried to write the truth in the wake of George Floyd and all that nonsense, and that's what ultimately led to his breakup with the Chicago Tribune. You're not allowed to write the truth. And remember the post-George Floyd thing, you weren't even allowed to point out that the riots might not be helping the very communities that were supposed to be, getting the most sympathy. None of that was allowed. And but like the race stuff is so in your face with the Democrats. And of course now, not only are they congregating in like the blacks for Kamala, the Hispanics for Kamala, the LGBTQs, they're deciding, of course, to dump on the whites because that joke, yes, it was a throwaway dumb joke about tacos, but there's a reason they felt comfortable. They would never do that in a way that would denigrate black people or Hispanic people. And this is kind of silly, but it is interesting. People online actually fact-checked. He was lying. He was cosplaying the, dopey white guy there because actually he submitted the winning turkey taco tot hot dish and won first place at Senator Al Franken's annual Hot Dish Off back in 2016. It was his 3rd victory, and his hot dish contained green chilies, taco sauce, and chili pepper powder, all hotter than black pepper. The point is simply, what does he do? He shits on fellow white guys because it's so in vogue. It's so it's fine to do that. And you know what? When you do that, Governor Walz, you shit on my boys. You shit on my husband. You shit on my neighbor's little boys. And you tell
My
them,
sons.
right, that they're uncool, they're lame, they're bland, and there will be no one rooting for them in a Harris Walz White House.
I've been watching you for years now. And the other day I was listening to Victor Davis Hanson, and he was talking about you. And what he said was this form, the long form, suits you perfectly. And I have to agree that you get into things that you didn't get into or couldn't on television. And the long form allows you the freedom to explore and question. And I love it. So more power to you.
I love it too. And it's also, you can drop the occasional 4-letter word, which, it's very rare for me.
I'm still not used to it. Yeah, I'm still
very rare. but every once in a while I'll do it. So what are the odds of seeing like a Bill Ayers appearance at the DNC, John? My old favorite domestic terrorist.
Well, I think he should be there. I mean, isn't he around?
Yeah.
I'm not chasing him. I'm sure that the New York Times, maybe the stylist of the New York Times, who's interested so much in style and the verbal style, she might do it.
Yeah, I would like to see.
It would be a cliche if Maureen Dowd hung out with Bill Ayers, but cliches in baseball.
Well, who are you most looking forward to seeing? I mean, we got Michelle, we've got Barack, we've got Bill, we've got Joe tonight, Kamala.
You've got Bevan on, or did you have him on already?
Yeah, I did, first hour.
Going to be. Okay, so we had a bet that Michelle Obama would be the savior of the Democratic Party, and obviously not. So I don't know if I won the bet or he won the bet as a result, but I was hoping for Michelle to see what she's going to say. But really, this convention is just a TV show and losers cover it. I mean, look at me with the tie and the jacket. I'm covering it. I'm a Johnny reporter now. But, I remember covering conventions for years and not liking the TV show aspect, but it's all TV. It's all TV now. It's a TV show. So my advice to all of them, love the Soros sisters because they're going to be your bosses in the future in your neighborhoods, and have a hot dog.
Yeah. You point out, I actually didn't realize. I knew that Kim Fox was a Soros descendant. I didn't realize that Kim Fox calls Kamala Harris her mentor and that these two are close. I mean, they want us now to believe that Kamala Harris is tough on crime, ballsy prosecutor. No, she is totally on board with the Soros approach.
That's your Cracker Jack production staff put that picture up. That was wonderful. Yes, she is totally. She loves, and you know what? Who else they have? They have in common Juicy Smollett. Okay.
Yeah, they both believed.
Him. I would like to see Juicy have a speaking role at this convention, but I don't think he's going to get one.
He's not suicidal. That's all you need to know. Not suicidal. Yeah, exactly. And not really going to jail for any meaningful time because of Kim Fox. John, always a pleasure, my friend.
Love you, and have a great convention. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You can find all of John's work at John Kass, spelled with a K, A-K-A-S-S, news.com, johnkassnews.com. Next up, yes, it's true. The rumors are true. In a way, Kamala Harris is here, and I will interview her. Stand by. You didn't vote for this economic downturn and the high inflation, but you could pay for it at the pump, at the grocery store, and with growing stacks of unpaid bills. Financial stress can be crushing, and one solution could be donewithdebt.com. Done With Debt created new, aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without the dreaded bankruptcy or new loans. Done With Debt can stand between you and your bill collectors. They will negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interest, and stop penalties. And the best news is Done With Debt is accepting new clients right now. But you should hurry because some of their debt strategies are time sensitive and you don't want to miss out. Let Done With Debt hit the debt reset button for you and make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com or call 1-888-322-1054 right now. 1-888-322-1054. Chat with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. In these crazy times, there is peace of mind and security. Security for our country, for our leaders, and for our families. But think about this. Are you really financially secure if all of your eggs are in one financial basket? Gold and silver can be an excellent way to diversify your savings as a hedge against inflation. They're a physical asset that is in high demand globally. And through Birch Gold Group, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Yes, you can diversify an old IRA or 401k for no money out of pocket into an IRA in gold and silver. Text MK to 989898 and receive a free no-obligation info kit and learn the role precious metals could play in your overall saving strategy. Again, text MK to 989898. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. Text MK to 989898. Message and data rates may apply. I got to tell you, I am so sad today because one of the best and most influential broadcasters of all time has died. Phil Donahue. I can't believe it. You know, there's some figures who just seem larger than life to you. And growing up over the past 50 years, Phil Donahue was a fixture in all of our living rooms, on our televisions for, my coming of age years. And I got to say, no one did it better. He ultimately became a friend, but for most of my life, he was just someone I deeply admired and loved to watch. His interviews, smart, funny, entertaining, provocative, wasn't afraid to go to the place that hurt. Ultimately, Oprah would come along and she would be a lot softer. She would herself be kind of like a soft place to fall for people. Phil could do soft and loving and supportive, but he could also do hard hitting and made the whole genre of talk TV into what it was. With the microphone, running up and down the aisles, sticking the stick mic in the, face of his audience members, having them weigh in, having them fight, getting all over the guests. It was exciting. We hadn't seen anything quite like it on TV. I was enjoying, I think I told you guys this story, but I was enjoying one of his interviews. You know how your YouTube feed just sometimes feeds you stuff you didn't ask for and you don't know if it knows you or if it doesn't know you, you click on the thing to find out. Mine apparently knows me because it fed me a Phil Donahue interview of the cast of Steel Magnolias at the time the movie was hitting. So it was right as the movie was coming out. Julia Roberts was still this young sort of ingenue, and all the greats were up there: Olympia Dukakis, Sally Fields, Shirley MacLaine, Dolly Parton. And this is just a small moment. You could pick 10,000 from Phil Donahue, but just look how good he was. Look at this fun question he dropped on Shirley MacLaine.
I look at Shirley and I think of the kicks, she is way up there. Best looking legs, best looking body, best looking face in the business, triple threat. She looks like hell in this picture.
I'll do anything for an award, Phil.
They will never accuse you of vanity. What a wonderful performance you delivered in this film. You are the most cranky, cynical.
Look how good he is, right? He set up the fact that she made herself very unattractive in that movie with the compliments and with humor, and then drops the hammer about how she actually appears in this film. That is talent, people. That is talent. Keep her softened up, but get her to talk about it. And she did, and she took it in good humor. It's just, I know it's not, Van Gogh, it's not Beethoven, but it's Talk TV's version of it. He was uniquely talented. And of course, he really came to fame attacking very serious subject matters too. Donahue managed to open the door to discussing some of the most divisive subjects of our time, from abortion, back when, it wasn't discussed, to sexual abuse, to very heated segments on the state of race relations in America.
If the white power structure in this country is going to be said to have destroyed everything black, then you are indicting black people as well. We were, in fact, and we are today engaged in a struggle. We are, in fact, and we were today, in many ways, and you can see it on the street, engaged in a kind of warfare in which our survival is at stake. But don't tell me we have won no battles in that war. None of us would be sitting here at all. Some people have won.
I don't know if it's fair to suggest that she's saying there have been no victories.
Lacks integrity.
Okay, so sometimes he would lose control, but he always kept our interest. His success paved the way for so many others. Obviously, Oprah is the biggest. She actually is on record as saying if it weren't for Phil Donahue, there never would have been an Oprah show. I'm sure that's true. He invented the whole thing. His show ran for 26 years. He won 9 daytime Emmys for Best Talk Show Host. Back in 2017, you know how the years at NBC were not so great. Year, not years, year plus. But I got to meet Phil Donahue. He and I met prior to my taking the job. Here he was coming on the show, and I'll play you a soundbite, but I met him before I actually began work there on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And we went out to lunch a couple of times. He was so nice. He was so good to me. He didn't know me. He didn't have to sit with me. Why would he? He was just a kind guy who was happy to help somebody who was coming up and who was going to try this new thing. And by the way, I would feel firsthand how this cannot be imitated, right? Some people have this gift and some don't. But couldn't have been nicer about my life, about my family, about my job, all of it. And ultimately, he did come on the show. And I spoke to him about his legendary career, about his life. You know, he was married to Marlo Thomas, right? His love affair with his second wife is kind of legendary. But he had a first wife with whom he had 5 children, 4 boys and a girl. And they were divorced. And in a typical sort of Phil Donahue moment, when he spoke about that time in his life, he touched our hearts and managed to make us laugh too.
You were raising your children by yourself for a long part of their childhoods. I've read Phil's book.
Yeah, that was from the 6th grade on into freshman in high school is when I became a single parent of 4 sons. And I didn't know what to do with them. And I was doing, a show every day, running back and forth over my shoes. And I certainly learned a lot about what women endure. And I know the downy goes in the rinse cycle. We did a show. I finally was able to get some help. A woman from Yugoslavia, very sweet, nice woman. And I did a show on drugs and teenagers, and we had bongs and pipes and showed all the paraphernalia. And I got home from work that day, and the woman from Yugoslavia, who was my nanny, said, "Mr. Donahue, we have those things under your boy's bed up there."
It's sweet, right? He told that story. He had a sense of humor, always about himself, and I think that's what helped him live so long. His second marriage, as I mentioned, to actress Marlo Thomas, lasted for 44 years. They met when she was a guest on his talk show. And they later described the meeting as love at first sight. And boy, it did seem to be. Boy, they loved each other. When the other one wasn't around, they talked about each other endlessly and in glowing terms. That was a real love affair till the day he died. Phil Donahue died at home, surrounded by his family, his wife, children, grandchildren, and his beloved golden retriever, Charlie. He was 88 years old. And here is to a life well lived. I will miss him. I will miss his body of work. And I'm so thankful that we have a record of it so we can enjoy him still. Well, okay. On the subject of laughs and someone who you see on camera, bringing them to you free of charge and just to improve your day, I bring in my next guest. And it happens to be someone you know very well. She goes by Vice President Kamala Harris. It was a very tough booking, but we managed to get it. And we're gonna go through our friend comedian and Kamala Harris impersonator Estee Palti to get it. She goes by Estee Palti online, and we have been cracking up over Esther's impressions on this show for a long time. Let me just set it up like this one.
I'll be running for president of the United States. And we have states. And they're united. And because think about it. States should be united. And all the states now, well, they have a president to preside over them. Oh, that's good.
absolutely nails it. She joins me now. Esther, welcome to the show.
Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh,
I crack
it's so
myself
fun
up, honestly.
It's so fun to see you as your real self, like hear you talk the way you normally talk, because, I've only heard you do her.
Yes, honestly. I mean, I lose brain cells every time. Sometimes it does get a little difficult. But yeah, no, the real me, front and center. So happy to be here. So lovely to meet you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about yourself. Are you in any way in comedy? Did you do impressions prior to doing this one?
Not at all. Honestly, this has all been such a whirlwind for me. I did start a little while ago. So during the pandemic, I was forced to share a space with my husband 24/7 for the first time ever since, from the time that we got married. And, things just got hectic. Everyone was bored. I downloaded TikTok. And from there, it just kind of took a life force on its own. I was just doing skits. I just have a fun personality. I even patient facing. I work as a nurse. When I was patient facing, I was the funny nurse. I was always mimicking the doctors, just picking up on everything they said. And, from doing the Kamala, which was by accident, by the way, someone had noticed that, I sound like her. I replied to the comment, made a video. And from there, I just really took a life force on its own. I kept, I stayed consistent with it because Joe wasn't looking good for me, from the time that he came into office. So I looked at him as somebody that, what, I think I have something here. I don't think Joe's going to last 4 years. And I think at some point she's going to be front and center. And that's when I'll really use this superpower that I've acquired, to bring it home and just show everyone how ridiculous she is, because I do see that there is some support for her and I don't understand it. So, if I have this gift that I've been given, I will continue to ride with it and just, bring levity to the situation.
We should have been listening to you as somebody who impersonates her. You were paying attention to the dynamics in a uniquely attentive way. And we should have been talking to you about what you saw. So you were right. And if she wins, you're going to have a hell of a 4 years. But so how did you do it? Like, some people can just do impressions. I've noticed this. Like, my husband's very good at it. He doesn't actually do them for comedy or anything. Just when he's telling a story, if he launches into an impression, I'm always like, you're really good at that. Were you always just that person? Like, you could hear the cadence and the way somebody speaks. Like, that's just always been a gift for you.
I definitely think so. I don't have any professional, skill in acting, but I've always, I guess the word would be mimic. I've always been a very, very good mimic. And just listening to her, at the first time I heard the impression and tried it, I don't think I had all the cadence down and my voice was still like my voice. But, over time, you kind of learn to just listen to it. And if you listen closely, she does this tremble. She does this tremble where she's pretending like she's thinking about something really, really, important. And she likes to use her hands. And, when she's really lost, she just breaks out into laughter.
It must be so fun for you. I saw you do one recently where you were like, you'd had it and you were like, this is post her, replacement of Joe Biden. And you were like, Kamala, you've got to give me some new material.
Oh my God, 3.5 years, okay. So the mimic is there. I'm listening to the speeches and it's the same thing over and over again. And at this point now I had a feeding frenzy on my hands. I have all these audiences, all these platforms that, like you were saying, like, give us more. And I'm like, I don't know how else to spin this. I need her help at this point. She needs to say different things. So that's part of the reason why I was like, I need her front and center for more content, because
like, what were the top ones that would jump out, that you were forced to do over and over because you've been watching her speeches?
Unburdening what has been, over and over again. She has said that one. She still says that one. For the longest time, I tried to make sense of it. I only recently learned that this is apparently some kind of Marxist saying that she's been saying, that she kind of took right out from her dad's civil rights movement that he's been talking to her about. But I don't think she knows that we don't know what she's saying. Like, it doesn't really resonate with anyone. And she tries to drive it in like it's her headline, right? Like, make America great again. Love them or hate them. It's a great tagline. It's patriotic. Everyone wants America to be great. But her unburdening what has been, I don't know one person that has sat there and given her like some kind of trophy for that. Like, God, isn't she so smart? And look how she speaks eloquently about unburdening what has been. She is the burden that we must unburden, So at this point, it's like, I don't know what she's talking about, but I really, sometimes, listening to her and trying to do the stuff verbatim, It hurts the brain. And I'm like, we need to spice things up. But now that we have Tim Walz, and her, I call them, Tim Tampon, Campon. I love that. My friend was like, oh, you should call yourself Campon. That's what the campaign should run on. So, yeah. I think the people are going to love that one. Yeah.
She's got unburdening. She's got her Venn diagrams. How have you chosen to capture, the way she talks to us like we're idiots, right? Like is that one of her main themes? Because that's how I experience her.
She reminds me of I have a 5 and a 6-year-old. So when I started this, they were really young. And she reminded me of, the preschool teachers that were talking to my children, because that's how she talks to her audiences. And just looking at her, she's so ingenuine. She's so inauthentic. And you can't help but observe her. And from an observer's perspective, just watching her and listening to her for the impression aspect, my cadence kind of absorbed all of that inauthenticity, and I use it to poke fun at her because you can see it. She's so ingenuine, and from the fake smile to the nodding, like she's telling people like, yeah, I resonate with you. But then she goes, let me be clear. We all watched the television coverage of just yesterday. And that's what we've seen and we haven't seen yet. And think about all the things that we have yet to still see. And, just because we didn't see it, it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Just limited to what we've seen. And it's like, listen to that whole statement. That's, by the way, a verbatim quote from one of the things that she said. It's one of my top faves because you can't make it make sense no matter how many times you swing it. And just listening to her, it's like, what? And is that the purpose? Confuse the voter, panders to the Democrats. She adds a little accent in there when she talks to the inner cities. Yes. I saw you and John Kass right before this. The pandering has to be a favorite of mine because I'm a New Yorker. I've lived here, 32 years, and just listening to how she talks to them. And I'm like, if I was a black voter, I would genuinely be offended. All right. Cause she's talking to them like, I make a mean pot of collard greens. And she's all of a sudden like, this cadence appears from her that she's Medea in Tyler Perry's newest movie. And it's like all of us see it. And I've spoken to minorities and we've spoken to each other. And it's like, what do you think? You think she's being genuine? And they're like, I would slap her if she was in front of me. That's ridiculous. This is racist. And how she was kind of trying to like act like she got all that flavor in that ridiculous manufactured interview with her and Tampon. And, that's his name, by the way, officially. And it's like she's talking to him about like, oh, you didn't really season it. And he's like, oh no, I'm a white guy from Minnesota. And it's like, you look at him, he's probably one of the people that encouraged her to do the vasectomies at the DNC today in Chicago, because I don't know what Tampon's thinking, but that's not a self-respecting man. I'm sorry. You're allowing that woman to basically prop you up like a little puppet, and you're hating on yourself and your own people. I mean, I'm not really sure of his history, but if he has children, he should apologize to them because that is not a strong man.
He loves cutting off body parts. So I'm sure it is him. He's like, yes, I can cut somebody else's penis. Let's do it. Let's get a whole van where they do it. I'm in.
It's ridiculous.
So now I've got to ask you how you're handling the drunk Kamala meme, because I think literally every friend I have sent me texts over the weekend with videos. It's become a thing. People are starting to wonder, drunk or just normal. But there's a lot of videos of her kind of slurry on the internet. So how are you incorporating that, if at all?
I incorporate it all the time because she's always trying to almost like drive a point in with her hands, and she tries to sound like she's going to say something so magnificent, but it's actually in the impression. She's always kind of slurring. So like, today is today. Like her voice, it breaks all the time. It trembles. And when you add that laugh and her shoulders, and she's just out of control, and she's the only one in the room laughing, she's either having a great time on something, or she's just a joyful warrior, as she calls herself, which, again, that's straight out of a communism book, by the way. Hitler, Stalin, they all love to use the word joy. So I love to, really underline that in my impressions as well, that she is just a joyful warrior during nothing to be joyful about. So,
have you gotten to
trembling,
her? Huh? Yeah, go ahead. You go.
No, with the trembling, and, imagine if I was on camera holding a drink and trying to look, for the straw. And if you just listen and close your eyes for a second, well, it sounds like she's hammered, right? She's just having a good time at happy hour. And, that's the best impression that I do of her, if I'm being quite frank.
That The facial expressions are so good. The listening audience has got to go to our YouTube, youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, and check out Estee here and on her own platform, because the facial expressions are so good. What you do with your mouth. So truly, you just studied her and that came to you. Like, I can't even do it, but like you make your mouth go out there. That she does do that.
Yeah. Yes, we can do that. Yes, we can take away your rights. Oh my God, I can't believe the audience is even asking me that. Of course we can take away your rights. That's what the Democratic Party is about. That's it. That's what you're going to get over and over again from her. So, you guys want to vote for that, go for it.
Yeah, right on. Have you been enjoying the emergence over the past couple of days of the new phrase? It's not new, but it's new again, of the duality. The duality of America. It's both strong and weak.
And it's just so, also fragile, so the duality, right, Megyn? If you put up a Venn diagram right here, right, the duality, it's so fragile and it's so pure, and I'm not really sure I know what I'm talking about. I just know I like the sound of the word duality, right? It's a great time, honestly. I've had a blast. At the very least, it started as just an impression, just having fun doing her stuff verbatim, but making it my own and using it to really expose her nonsense. I mean, that's a superpower that I will take on any day.
Do you think you'll get a call from SNL asking you to play her on Saturday Night Live?
Absolutely not. They went with Maya Rudolph, and I'm very happy for her. I think Maya Rudolph is incredibly talented. She's so funny. One of my favorite movies is Bridesmaids, but it's a little bit of a vanilla impression. And, the fact that they signed her on again and she got an Emmy for this award in the past. For this impression in the past. It's a very vanilla impression. She kind of makes Kamala just seem like nice, relatable, cool, fun, and energy. She doesn't insult her in any way in the cadences. It's very sad to me because I think we should be, having fun with it. I love the Donald Trump impressionists. I think it's hysterical to laugh at that man. He's hysterical. He says things. Listening to him, when he said, with his stupid face, with his stupid, about Biden, like he just says things that's funny. There's so many people that can do the impression because he definitely has these mannerisms that are very, very specifically Trump, right? I think anybody can kind of attempt some kind of like listen to me, some kind of Trump impression. But, it's very sad that they don't want to make fun of things the way that they once did. But I think it's a very delicate time and they would never, I don't know who they're afraid of. When I come out and do Kamala, I knock the light out of everything. I'm sorry about that. But it's just the demonic energy. Just sometimes it breaks glass windows and it sometimes, goes through the lights. But that's okay. We'll continue. And I love going the back and forth. But yeah, listen, shout out to Maya Rudolph. I think she's great. But, SNL, you guys are leaving money on the table. That's the best thing, the best way that I can put it. They should be having a lot of fun.
They wouldn't hire you because you're openly conservative too. You're openly conservative, which is a no at NBC. I can speak to that. And at SNL. So they wouldn't react well to that. But they're crazy not to, because you're right. Like, there's such money sitting there right on the floor. If they just pick up this impression, put it on television, everybody will watch it. And they're not interested in something that might actually legit make people laugh because it's slightly cutting, as great comedy should be.
Well, yeah, and the powers that be really obviously don't want her made fun of. That's very clear, but it also kind of exposes their hand. It's almost like they're trying to show this picture of her of relatable. And again, it's so manufactured that the other side of things should really question this and say, hey, if you're so proud of her, let her come out and make speeches. Let her come out and, make press conferences. Let someone make fun of her. Let her own it. The fact that she does not want to, hiding from the press, and they're afraid to even make fun of her, I think that's very telling of today's, mainstream media feel. And thank God there's people like you out there that are not afraid. I agree with John Kass, by the way. You are incredible in long form. And I think that everything happens for a reason. And this is just the way that things have to be. So if I have to do this, not mainstream media, I'll still get my voice heard because of people like Elon Musk that believe in freedom of speech and people such as yourself that can find levity in the situation, no matter what side of the spectrum you're on.
Well, you're welcome back here anytime. You've been such a joy. When I discovered you, I could not get enough. I just spent like a day clicking on your videos, and I've been playing them on the show and will continue to. Esther, all the best. Please come back.
Thank you. I will. Thank you, Megyn.
Okay, you can follow Esther on X. Go to Mommy RN, like registered nurse 88, Mommy RN 88. You will not be sorry. She's spectacular. Great for like a daily laugh. And who doesn't want that? The DNC kicks off tonight. We'll be watching and we will cover it all with the fellas from Ruthless tomorrow.